Ms. Blessing, it looks like the attendance is stabilized, so you can probably go ahead and tell me ready.
Okay, thank you, Greg. My members all ready. We'll begin this meeting. Thank you all for joining this emergency Oceanside School Board District urgency a special meeting on December, what is today anyway? It's December 10th, right? 2020 at 3 p.m. Thank you all for joining us. First order is to call the roll. I'll start with member Stacy Begin. Are you present? Thank you, Stacy. Vice President Stacy Begin. Clerk Eric Joyce.
Present.
Board member Eleanor Evans.
Present.
Board member Raquel Alvarez.
Present.
All right, we're all present and accounted for. All right, next item is approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda this evening?
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
I've got a motion from Eleanor Evans and a second from Stacy Begin, if I heard that right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. All right. All right, the next item is item C of this two-item agenda this evening. This is to consider reinstating elementary virtual learning to take necessary action to protect students and staff from the spread of COVID-19. We'll have a staff presentation, and then we'll take the public comments that we have submitted, and then we'll have board deliberation and action on this item first, and then we'll move on to the item D. So with that, we'll turn it over to staff.
Just loading up our presentation.
Perfect, okay.
So good afternoon, Board of Education. Today we will be providing the board with information to support our recommendation, which is to pivot our elementary program back to completely virtual beginning Monday. We will demonstrate the impact that the rise in COVID cases has had on our community, our employees, and ultimately our system and ability to provide in-person services to our students. We understand the timing of this decision is not ideal, but it is our belief that our system is at a breaking point, and we will share what I mean by that and provide the information that the board needs in order to make an informed decision. To give you a county-wide view of what is happening district-wide, on the next slide, the San Diego County Office of Education gathers information from every district just to give an overall view of how students are currently being educated. This is the most recent data that was available on the San Diego County Office of Education website. And you will still see that 71% of students in the county are being educated through a distance model, and 22% hybrid, and 6% in person, which is predominantly in the charter and private school system. This is just to give you an overview of what is happening throughout the county as of December. Since then, we do know that 2 other districts pivoted completely back to virtual learning. So next will be Dr. Lovey, and she is going to give some information about what has happened in the county with case rates. And then Dr. McAteer will talk about how that has impacted our decision and what led us to have this meeting here today. So Dr. Lovey.
Thank you, Dr. Vitale. Throughout our time here in the pandemic, we have been closely monitoring state, local, and national data. We believe that we need to make sure that we are ahead of these trends and that we understand what our testing, contact tracing, and local situation is. So on this slide, this shows the local health department's monitoring system. There are 13 areas that the county monitors to make decisions about local health orders. We want to make sure that we better understand this as well. So we have provided here two data points provided by the county, one being from Sunday of this week and the other from Wednesday, the 9th, which is yesterday. And we want to point out 3 particular areas out of the 13 of particular interest. So if you look at the first section, which is case rate, which is number 1 indicator. On that case rate on Sunday, the case rate was 15 cases, 15.3 cases per 100,000 residents. The threshold for being a acceptable level according to this matrix is 7 per 100,000. And that's where we were when we opened in our hybrid system. If you look at the second set of data, number 1, we have now risen to 27 cases per 100,000 in just from Sunday to Wednesday. The next piece of data we want to look at is box number 2, which is community outbreaks. This is again for the entire county of San Diego. And you will see that community outbreaks are defined as people who are contracting with COVID-19 outside of their household. So in a gymnasium, in a business, a restaurant, or something like that. And what we have found that on Sunday, there were 88 community outbreaks over the past 7 days. And yesterday there were 67 over the past 7 days. And this is 3 or more outbreaks in any particular place. And the third piece of data that we are looking at closely is number 10. Number 10 is our case positivity rate. So the case positivity rate is calculated by taking all the people who take a COVID-19 test and finding out how many of them have a positive result. So what we want to is the threshold for this is to keep that rate of all the people who take a COVID-19 test under 8%. On Sunday, the rate was 8.4, and yesterday the rate increased to 9.4. And we just had information this morning from the county. This is at one of the highest levels of testing we've ever had, with about 20,000 tests being conducted every single day in San Diego County. The idea is that the more tests you have, that you would want that case positivity rate to be going down rather than going up. Next slide, please. Well, San Diego as a county is a very large county. It's the second largest county in the state of California. We think it's important to look specifically at what's happening here in Oceanside. So this is the local Oceanside data for our city. And what you can see in this, as we monitor this daily, sometimes twice a day, what we found is in this slide, it shows us the 7-day case rate for Oceanside. The most recent data reports that our case rate is 23.6 cases per 100,000. This again, the threshold is less than 7 per 100,000. The week prior to this, the rate was 13.6 cases per 100,000. This is a 73% increases in cases week to week in our city. We know as the pandemic impacts our community, it also impacts our schools. We have found our schools to have safety measures that are in place. And we also know that the community and our schools are made up of people who live in our community. So I will now turn it over to Dr. McAteer.
Thank you, Dr. Levy. Good afternoon, board members and Superintendent Vitale. My name is Todd McAteer. I'm the Associate Superintendent of Human Resources. There are over 2,000 employees who work for OUSD. Each position and every person has a vital role in providing quality services and education for our 16,400 students. The district is staffed to be operationally efficient, and anytime a position is unfilled, it creates stress on the system. In normal times, subs would be able to fill in when an employee is out. However, we are in challenging times. All districts in San Diego County have smaller substitute pools to draw from. This substitute shortage is due to COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, we have an increase in staff being absent due to illness from COVID-19 or having to quarantine because they were in close contact with a person who tested positive. We are an interdependent organization. If we don't have enough bus drivers, then students cannot be transported to school. If there aren't enough nutrition service workers, food cannot be prepared for students. And if a custodian is absent and there's not a sub to fill, then the important work of disinfecting a classroom won't occur. Every employee is critical to the district. Next slide, please. This slide shows the frontline employee absence system for today, specifically showing the classified employees. As you can see, the district has only 66.7% of absences filled. There are 23 positions unfilled. This impacts the support for services provided to students and the work that is not being done. To date, there are over 150 classified employees who have missed work due to COVID-19. Next slide. This slide shows the unfilled teaching positions for today. There are 10 classrooms without a teacher or a substitute in the district to fill in. We have made efforts to increase our substitute availability with fast-tracked recruitments, increased pay to $170 per day for classroom subs, and creating full-time sub-residents. The master contract allows the district to pay teachers to take students from another class when a substitute is not available. However, because of COVID-19, we are unable to mix cohorts, and this option is not available. Altogether, there's a reason for the substitute deficit, which has incrementally increased, and as you will see in the next slide, is unsustainable. This slide shows the total number of elementary classrooms that did not have a substitute when the teacher was absent. There were 22 unfilled classes the 2 weeks prior to the Thanksgiving break. We struggled to meet the needs of covering those 22 openings. After the break, you can see the number more than doubled to 54 unfilled assignments. The increases of employee absences are reflective of the spike in COVID-19 cases that we are seeing in our region. As the number of employees sick or in quarantine increases, so does the stress to our organization. The impact of unfilled classes has caused a ripple effect. Principals, elementary, middle, and high school APs, coordinators, and counselors have all had to cover classes when they do that, the other parts of their job stop. They're not available for IEP meetings or to communicate with parents and students or support the school in all the ways that they do. Our Associate Superintendent, Dr. Levy, along with Lincoln Middle School Principal Steve Besant, will be teaching at South Oceanside tomorrow. There are no more staff to call upon to help cover, and the needs continue to grow. The Band-Aid of administrators covering openings has taxed the organization and is only a short-term solution. The current trends of COVID-19 cases would indicate a continued increase of our staff being out. The next step will be to close classes and notify parents that they will need to pick up their child because of the lack of supervision. Dr. Levy will speak to the next slide on our expanding learning support models.
Thank you. As we know, there is a desperate need for parents of and families for children to be in a safe learning environment. And since the beginning of our pandemic and our in-person school shutdown, we have had our expanded learning support models. And in these models, we are serving 471 students at 16 sites. We plan on continuing to have this expanded learning support model to the extent possible that we can continue to staff this and provide a safe learning environment for students. Thank you very much. Dr. Vitale?
Yes, so on the next slide is our recommendation to the Board of Education that we pivot elementary schools to virtual learning beginning Monday, December 14th, and reevaluate the situation at our January 12th board meeting. That is our recommendation, and just one caveat to that is I want to make it clear that this doesn't mean that we have to wait for the county to go back into the red tier before we consider putting elementary back into the hybrid situation. We're able to do that at any time, and we have, because we went into hybrid during the red tier, we have the ability to toggle in and out based on our local decision making. So I just want to make that very clear. And the reason that we're saying reevaluated at the January 12 meeting is that we have every indication and metric demonstrates that cases will continue to rise over break. We don't think that there will be any change to our sub situation until we see a decrease in COVID cases.
Okay. With that, we'll go to public comment. Ann and Greg, you guys call out the names in that. Everyone I think knows pretty much the situation here. We'll give you 3 minutes each maximum, and when your time is up, your time is shown on the screen, but you'll then get muted off your time when you exceed the 3 minutes. We do, I think, have a couple of translations, Spanish translations, that we grant 6 minutes to accomplish a word-for-word translation. But other than that, please try and wrap your comments into the 3 minute span. We appreciate it so much. We want to hear all of you, and we will in this afternoon, evening session. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We hear there's like over 800 people zoomed into this meeting, so that's incredible. All right, Ann?
Okay, so we're going to start with our two Spanish speakers who need help with the translation, Veronica Garcia and Clemente Gomez.
Veronica, you're all set. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Veronica Garcia. I'm really surprised because I did not fill out the form to speak today. But right now that I'm speaking, I just want to say to the parents that it's hard, the situation that is going on. We all want the same for our kids, and you as a board members, it's a hard decision, and if any decision that you will make, there's gonna be people mad or happy. So I just wanna tell the people to be aware about the pandemic. It's not something that the school district has made up. It's something that's going on in everybody's life, and everybody needs to be aware of it and think about the decisions and not get mad for the decisions they're gonna make. And I'm concerned about my kids' safety and the teachers and everybody. So I do want to say to the parents to be supportive to the school district too, because every decision is gonna make a big impact in our kids' health. So that's what I wanted to say. I'm really surprised because I did not sign up for the comment.
All right.
Thank you for listening to me.
Well, thank you for speaking, even though we got you mixed up there or something like. We appreciate those comments. Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Next up.
Clemente Gomez.
Yo necesito intérprete.
Sí, aquí estoy adelante. A lo mejor lo voy a tener que interrumpir para que me deje, pero usted va a tener 6 minutos.
Hágame señal con la mano para yo entender y pausar.
Ok.
Muchas gracias.
Okay, adelante.
Bueno, pues empiezo. Buenas tardes, señores representantes del Distrito Escolar de Oceanside. Mi nombre es Clemente Gómez, como se muestra en la pantalla. Yo nunca estuve de acuerdo con la reapertura de las escuelas. En 2 ocasiones yo lo hice saber y pues no hicieron caso, o bueno, al menos para mí no hicieron caso el mantener cerradas las escuelas y mantener la educación a distancia. Yo siempre checo la página web del distrito. Hoy en la mañana revisé y vi que hay 28 casos positivos de coronavirus en el distrito. O a lo mejor estoy mal o no entiendo bien las informaciones que ponen ahí. Yo apoyo la opinión que dijeron allá, que mostraron de regresar el día lunes 14 de diciembre a clases virtuales, pero no nada más por un mes o 2 meses. Hay que mantener las escuelas en clases virtuales hasta que sea seguro regresar. No vamos a estar con experimentos como ya ha venido pasando, hacer experimentos para ver si funciona o no funciona, ¿verdad? No vamos, o qué es lo que esperan de todo esto. Esperan enfermar a toda la comunidad de Oceanside para que ustedes hagan caso, entiendan y cierren nuestras escuelas. Yo pienso que si los padres nos ponemos para enseñar a nuestros hijos, lo podemos hacer en casa, ayudarles con la ayuda de los maestros que están haciendo muy grande esfuerzo para enseñarles a nuestros hijos. Yo apoyo esa.
Permítame, ¿sí? Permítame. Okay, good evening, board and everyone present. My name is Clemente Gomez. As you see my name on the screen, I was never in agreement with the schools being reopened. I let my opinion be known on 2 occasions, but it seemed like I wasn't listened to. I wanted the education to continue to be distance learning. I always check the district website, and the last time I checked, there were 28 cases in the district. Maybe I'm wrong or I didn't understand, but that's the number of cases that I saw. I support the opinion that the schools return to virtual learning on December 14th, but not just for 1 or 2 months, until it's safe. I don't think we should be experimenting to see what's going to happen. What do you expect of all of this? That more people get sick until you understand that all of Oceanside gets sick and then you have to close the schools? For the parents, I think that we can work on teaching our children at home with the help of the teachers who are making a very strong effort. Continúe.
Ok, pues más que nada más es eso, para pedirles que mantengan la educación a distancia, no educación presencial. Por el momento me preocupa la educación de mi hijo, pero también me preocupa la salud. Ok. Supuestamente los casos que estaban diciendo en las noticias, o no sé si lo han escuchado, que de cada 10 personas hay una persona enferma. ¿Cuántas personas asisten a las escuelas? ¿Cuántos enfermos quiere decir que hay ahí en las escuelas presentes? Una tomada de temperatura en las mañanas no ayuda en nada. Muchas personas tienen la enfermedad sin saberlo y nada más el revisar la temperatura con cada mañana ya nos están haciendo engañar que la escuela es segura. Se le vio a un representante del distrito escolar en un video que subió a YouTube con mascarilla y con protector facial diciendo que era la seguridad. Posiblemente para las personas que trabajen en una oficina solos, con una mascarilla y un protector facial basta para que estén seguros. Pero yo veo que mi hijo va a la escuela, con el perdón de las palabras, como ratita de laboratorio para ver si ese experimento que ellos están haciendo funciona o no funciona. ¿Ok? Regresen a educación virtual, por favor. No más educación presenciales. Es todo. Gracias.
Gracias.
So I ask that we maintain distance learning, not in person. I care about my son's education, but also his health. I've seen a lot of cases on the news that out of every 10 people, there's 1 person who's sick. So how many people are going to the schools sick? I think taking the temperature in the morning is not helping. It just makes us deceived that everything's okay. There was a video put on YouTube by one of the district administrators talking about wearing a mask and wearing a facial shield. But maybe if you work in an office alone, a mask or a face covering is enough. But I'm sorry to say it this way, but I feel like my son is like a lab rat to go to school and see what is working or what won't work. please go back to virtual learning and not in person. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Clemente. Next speaker.
I'm going to call three, Mr. President, if that's okay.
Yes.
Colleen Carta, Amy Garcia, and Bridget Henderson.
I hear we're up to 900, so Greg's probably reaching deep to try and find these folks. So hang in there with us, everyone. We'll get to you. What's the challenge, Greg?
We're just having a little difficulty. We're working on it. Just give us a moment. My apologies.
Okay, okay.
We're actually not seeing their names as if they're not on. So I'm going to call.
No, Colleen Carter is on, but the interface is not allowing me to promote her at the moment. So.
Okay. I'm going to wait.
Colleen, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, school board members and superintendent. I am a teacher in the district, and I'm here because I just listened to all of your presentation, understand that staffing is super difficult, but that's not the only aspect that we have when it comes to education. Watching my students come back and being so happy and how much growth we have seen over the past 4 weeks is amazing. And we can do anything. We can go Zoom, but they don't want to. Today, when I said something to them about it, many children almost cried because they don't want to go back to that. I understand that there is a lot of emotion out there, and there are teachers and parents who are scared. And as many teachers and parents that are scared, there are teachers who want to be in the classroom with their students, and there are parents who are begging for more education. So when you have that kind of emotion out there, you kind of have to take the emotion out of it and look at the data. And you shared a lot of data about Oceanside, and it looks dire. And I'm not, putting that aside or anything. Those numbers are scary to some extent. But when you compare that to the dashboard that you have, where we have 28 cases in all of the schools in the district, you have to say, that just kind of shows that maybe schools aren't where the issue is. And for you to take away the opportunity of students whose parents and teachers want to be there. If there are parents and teachers that don't want to, I believe that Surfside should be expanded so that they can make that choice. But there are teachers and there are parents that want to stay in school. Especially, we only have 1 more week before the break. At my site and 4 other elementary schools, there are 0 cases right now. So I understand that there is a staffing issue. I understand that we have to make sure we have that covered so that we can keep them safe. But we also, it's been drilled into us as teachers that we need to make sure we're looking at the social emotional piece to this. And unfortunately, that ties to them coming to school. There are students who this is their safe place. This is their place they get to come to be with their friends and to interact and to talk and to complete their work and to grow. And like I said, the amount of growth that I've seen personally in my students has been tenfold over what I saw the first 3 months. And I'm a good teacher. I'm a good online teacher. I'm a good in-person teacher. That's not the problem. They need that social emotional interaction. They need the schooling. And if parents and teachers, there are quite a few of us that maybe we don't write letters to tell you how happy we are to be in school. Maybe we should write letters to everybody saying, this is what we want. Then maybe that would make some impact. But people don't think to write letters when they're happy. They do it when they're mad or they're scared. So if you are getting letters, please know that there are people out there that want to stay in the classroom with our students, and quite a few parents that want that as well. So I appreciate you listening. I know that some of it may be out of your hands, but I appreciate if you would take it into consideration.
Thank you, Colleen. Next.
Is that me?
Amy. Amy Garcia. You would need to unmute yourself. Bridget, you can go.
Oh, it's my turn now?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Bridget Henderson. First like to thank you guys for the opportunity to speak. This is something that I have stayed very mostly on top of. I have multiple children, so it's hard to stay absolutely on top. I just wanted to say I second everything that the teacher before me just said. It is more than just an educational aspect. It's the mental health aspect. It's the social aspect of it. These children get much more than just their education at school. I just am curious, at what point in time will you guys stop looking at Oceanside as a whole? And I know that's hard to do because the numbers come from Oceanside as a whole, and start looking more specifically at the schools and the population of the schools. The school that my son goes to is a school that is pre-K all the way through 8th grade. There are not very many students in that school. We have no positive cases that I'm aware of at our current school. So what point in time do you start looking at schools specifically, especially when it comes into relation of these children's education and their mental health? March 13th, 2020 was the last time they were in school. That is when you guys should have started plan B through Z for this exact scenario right here. In that sense, that March 13th was when you guys failed these children. You guys are voted in by people in this community that think that you are more than capable to do your job. One gentleman earlier spoke of closing the school because there's no staff. That's what you guys are for. It is your jobs to run the school, the full operation of the school, make sure the school is operated. Don't close them down because of don't close down the schools and make our children suffer because you guys are lacking in what you're supposed to be doing in your jobs. Furthermore, my son has expressed to me multiple times, he can deal with the mask wearing for 4 hours a day. He can deal with the separate divider glass and the not being able to be by his friends. The one thing he cannot deal with is going outside to recess and not being allowed to play on any play equipment, stand 6 feet with their friends, not do anything but walk around while they see groups of other kids who are ASAP and IEPs playing with balls and jump ropes right in front of the other kids' eyes. That is cruel to these children, and it is inhumane. They're walking into schools where they feel like they're in prison, only they get more liberties in an actual prison. So I'm sorry, I'm getting very, it's sad when your child comes home and cries because they weren't able to see or talk to their friends while other kids were. There's got to be something else that you guys can do. You've cut their time frame in half. You give them a whole hour of breaks with nothing to do. Nothing. These children are your responsibility, first and foremost. It is the job that you chose. Nobody forced you to do it.
Thank you, Bridget. Time's up. Next speaker.
Amy Garcia. Okay, so we'll go to Amy Palmer. Okay, Elaine Kiswick and Lisa Templeton.
Hi, my name is Elaine Keswick. I have spoken at a board meeting before about my daughter Coral, who attends a special day preschool class in the district and has significant challenges across all developmental areas. Today, I would like to speak as a mother, as an educator, and previous elementary school teacher, and as a concerned community member. I continue to be very concerned about the most impacted student populations in our district. Since September 1st, Oceanside Unified was able to offer in-person learning and chose not to bring back the most impacted students, while other districts in SD County did have these student groups return to campus, giving them about 2.5 months of in-person instruction, equivalent to roughly 108 hybrid in-person hours before our students were offered even a single hour of in-person instruction, or in the case of my daughter, even a single hour of in-person related services. Furthermore, when after several postponements, some OUSD students finally returned to campus in November, the hybrid schedule was inferior to some surrounding districts. Some other districts offered a split hybrid schedule, 3 hours of morning and afternoon instruction, 4 days a week. Students under this model received 12 hours of weekly instruction compared to our students' 8 hours. That comes out to 50% more class time for the students in other districts. In fact, my daughter only gets 2 hours twice a week in her special day preschool class. This means that since the school closures in March, my daughter has had access to only 14 hours of in-person instruction, which, because distance learning is inappropriate for her, means she has only had 14 hours of any type of instruction since March. That is unacceptable. So what does all this mean? It means that OUSD is actually not putting its students first. There's a tremendous amount of data from the reopening of countless schools across the county between the period of September through today. Schools have been able to be safely open. They are not sources of community outbreaks per data on the county website. We also have data from other cities, including New York City, which show that the COVID positive rate in schools is often lower than the surrounding community. This district and this board, besides Trustee Joyce, who seems to be the only member who has expressed his concern about the impact of the delayed reopening on the most impacted students, do not seem to be willing to act boldly and with ingenuity for our students. We need a board that is going to act. I propose you look at revamping the current hybrid schedule to urgently give our students more time in class upon the return from winter break. Additionally, be prepared to bring back the youngest learners, special education students, and English language learners for a full-time return at the first sign of decreasing COVID cases. There is no time to delay. We now know that the virus will not be what kills our students. However, OUSD will be picking up the devastating and deadly, in the long term, pieces of a year or more of lost learning for so many students. And we know that the students who will be disproportionately adversely affected will be those that don't have able-bodied, racial, and/or socioeconomic privilege. For these reasons, I urge you to take a different course as a district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa?
Hi, my name is Lisa Templeton, and I currently teach first grade at South Oceanside Elementary. I've been teaching proudly for OUSD in primary grades for almost 30 years. Today, I represent the viewpoints of 4 of my first grade teachers here at South Oceanside Elementary. And I'd like to share with you that my husband has genetic emphysema, a virus that would highly impact my family. And so I think that's evidence that I've thoroughly considered factors. And so when I share with you that I have confidence in the safety of teachers and students remaining on campus, I've thoroughly thought that out. The benefits of remaining in person is that students are much more actively engaged in learning. When I compare student to student, one individual student compared to that same student, when I compare them to distance learning and the Zoom meetings, their engagement is much lower, their learning is much lower. I see those same students here in class with me, and it's like an entirely different child. In person, teachers can more accurately assess students' academic needs and more effectively instruct, and I think we'd all agree that less screen time has reduced long-term effects on especially the littlest ones. My concerns about returning to distance learning is poor engagement and the stress on the families. Stress on families, parents, the adults, all the kids impacts students' emotional and physical well-being. Approximately 40 to 50%, if not higher, of all of our first grade teams students are receiving apparently insufficient support at home to make sufficient academic progress, or they possibly live in a home environment that, for whatever reason, is just not conducive to maximum learning. And it seems that the majority of students who are negatively impacted the greatest are the students who need the most academic and emotional support. I would urge you to consider maybe some alternatives to going back to 100% distance learning. I feel that the safety precautions on campus are working well. Students have proved their ability to distance within the classroom while walking around campus. They're wearing their masks correctly. They stay seated at their assigned spots during their nutrition breaks when they have their masks removed. If staffing is a concern, there are some alternatives to going back to 100% distance learning. Instead of quarantining only the teacher and the affected cohort, we could quarantine that one single entire class, which right there relieves the need for a single sub. Also, it reduces subs being in the classroom and exposing students to whatever they've been exposed to when they've been at multiple job sites. Another consideration would be to consider that primary students have the highest need for hands-on concrete experiences in all subject areas. They also need much more assistance from their parents to do the Zoom meetings and to manage online activities. I would encourage you to consider possibly bringing back those students or whatever students you consider to be of highest need who'd benefit the most from remaining in person, and possibly cut the number of students on campus in half, and therefore you'd reduce potentially 50% of the need for subs. Thank you in advance for considering my viewpoints and the ideas that I've shared with you today.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next up.
We're gonna try, do we do Amy Palmer? Amy
Hi.
Palmer one more time? Okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
This school year, you've held board meeting after board meeting saying you welcome public parent input and comment, but refuse to acknowledge the overwhelming majority of parents who wanted to reopen schools full in person. You even went so far as to remove the in-person option on your parent surveys and turned off comment boxes there, as well as the Zoom board meetings, so you wouldn't have to be faced with that overwhelming public opinion. You could ignore it and us to push forward your narrative. Today was the first day I've received a response to my emails, which only further proves my point. I have been keeping track of the active COVID cases you post on the district page for the on-base schools specifically where my children attend. Yesterday was the first day since November 9th, 1 month ago when we started hybrid learning, that I have seen one active case. The rest of the days have all been at 0. Then there's the fact that we only have 1 more week of school before our 3-week winter break. The stay-at-home order is set to lift before our students even return from that break. You must not have children in elementary school right now, because the switch for this 1 week and very last minute, which will mean poorly executed like the rest of the transitions have been, will only hurt them more. Mine struggled greatly when we went from virtual to hybrid. Don't get me wrong, I celebrated when my kids had a chance for a partial normal education, but the transition was very rough. We have gotten used to the new schedule, and there will be fits again when we switch. I'm even tempted to start winter break early. I know there are many parents on the school and community pages I'm a part of that will agree with me on this. This 1 week of virtual school will put students even further back in grade level standards than they already are. Military kids show a great resilience in the lifestyle that they have to lead. But even this past PCS move that we have made put my son's personal behavior back 6 months. By going virtual for 1 week, you are effectively inflicting the same damage to all students, instead of writing out the remaining week and reassessing after winter break. This data you have shown also shows that students are safer at school. They're more likely to contract the disease in the community, where people are not forced to wear masks and socially distance like they are in the classroom. Not to mention the fact that these families have multiple children, some of whom are also in school, some who are infants. Many of our military community have deployed parents right now, so they're working this system alone. Majority of military families do not have extended family within 100 miles of where they're currently stationed, and we're not allowed to mix with other families who are not in our household, which means we are truly doing this alone. These kids need the hybrid schedule for this last week before break to have some normalcy in this crazy and tumultuous year we have had to endure. I've had many people on here state how well their experience has gone with the virtual learning. I fear those comments have been the ones handpicked to push the narrative. I'm here to tell you the majority are not sharing the same experience. Internet outages, problems with assignment uploads, disruptions on Zoom that would be better managed in the classroom, assignments not loading properly or being blocked by the district login are all common problems a majority of us are facing with learning at home. Anxiety, depression, mood swings, and more are all through the roof. I hope you reconsider and take our option into actual consideration and do the right thing. Reassess after break, not this week.
Thank you, Amy.
Next three speakers will be Chris Findell, Adam Sahagan, and Jessica Enriquez. So we'll start with you, Chris.
All right, hey, thanks for having me. So me and my wife are both in education. We have 3 students in OUSD, and we fully support kids staying in live classroom learning. Thank you for sharing the metrics. Numbers make sense to me when I look at stuff. When I look at the metrics still for ages 0 to 19, the numbers are really low still. When you think about the majority of your staff members, most of them are under the age of 60. So these are things to keep in mind when we're in the live environment. The OUSD dashboard with 28 cases, most schools have 0 cases. So I think that further solidifies the good job you guys are doing of protecting our kids, providing PPE to the staff members. So thank you. If you look around, Vista Unified has schools in Oceanside that are fully open. Kids are going there 5 days a week. So that would be the city of Oceanside, Vista Unified with kids there. Oceanside was the last to open. We haven't even had the kids there for a month, and we have a 3-week break coming up. I think it's the wrong time to reevaluate. We have additional breaks in the future with the ski week. Lastly, my family chose this learning model. We're okay with the risks. We know that COVID is something serious. We assess the risks and we're okay. As far as virtual learning impacting my students, I have a kindergartner, I have a 4th grader, and I have a 6th grader. I mean, virtually at best, maybe meets our visual and auditory learners, but there's no kinesthetic or tactile learning whatsoever, and there's no socialization. We're essentially creating a learning model of impaired learners. Virtual learning is like having a learning disability. What impact does this have on the future and how my kids learn? I mean, my kids are learning how to learn right now, and virtually is not the way that I see is going to be successful. Finally, students' home lives are thrust upon each other. One of my students witnessed another student's family member dying at home. That's not a safe learning environment. So I think the real reasons that we need to, that you guys are considering closing is, I think one, you guys already have attendance money. You're being paid out, so you're not incentivized to take additional risks. Teachers union is pushing back. I get it, it's scary times, but now more than ever is the time for teachers to prove that they're essential. I know that because I'm a teacher, and I support being back live. So give the teachers PPE they need, give them the outdoor learning environments, allow them to take leaves of absence, and increase sub pay so that we get more subs to fill in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Adam.
Adam, you need to unmute.
Adam, you will need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Go
wonderful,
for it.
wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear my thoughts today. I appreciate you. This year, it's been tumultuous. I know lots been going on with COVID. We've been working through it the best we can. I know you've had some struggles there at the school. Appreciate everything you guys are doing. I just want to say I have my This is gonna be my first experience with a child coming to school. My daughter, Brooklyn, she's thrilled to be in physical school. Me and my wife were both concerned with COVID and the start of virtual learning, just because, like Chris before said, she's learning how to learn. And it was not the best conducive learning environment for her. She's borderline ADHD, if you will. It runs in my family. And the distractions at home between her 3-year-old sister, our 1-year-old son, all the other things going home, we try to set up an area in the home that is her space. We try to monitor the best we can, but it is just not the same as being in school. And the growth she's had over just say the past month of being able to go just 2 days a week for roughly 3.5 hours, her growth has been exponential. And I feel going back to a completely virtual platform would just be a great disservice to her and to other students. I understand their concerns. I think the biggest concern at this point is the fact of the staffing issues that you guys are facing, not so much the safety issues. I know there are some parents that are concerned, rightly so, but I feel like the steps that have been taken at our local school have all been proven to be quite effective. I haven't really heard of any outbreaks over here at my school. And I just feel like teachers, staff, everyone at the school is doing a great job of keeping our children safe and providing that safe environment. And just the growth that they're having with physical in-class learning far exceeds any kind of growth that I've seen on the virtual side of things. So I hope that all of the comments that all our educators have made, family members are making for their students are taken into account. I really hope that you guys consider not shutting down and going back to virtual. I understand, especially during this last week. I really hope we're able to just push through and finish strong. I understand there are going to be lots of concerns and thoughts over the break about what we come back to, but I really hope that you guys decide to still continue this limited in-person learning we are doing at this time, just because even though it is not a lot of time that our students are actually getting per week, the growth is exponential. There's really no way to compare in my mind to the growth she had pre-physical, just doing solely virtual versus in-class learning. And I really hope you guys make the push to find the staffing you guys need to continue the in-person learning. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Jessica Enriquez.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Enriquez. I am a mother of 3. I have a teenager that was supposed to be a freshman for Oceanside High School. I also have a 9-year-old who is in 5th grade, and then a child that's not in preschool yet. So my concerns are these. It looks like you guys already made a decision, which for us, for the meeting, I wanted to talk to you guys first before you guys made a decision. My son is the one that's struggling the most. 5th grade is the grade where you're implementing the multiplication lesson that has 10 extra steps, the steps that I didn't learn when I was in school. And me as a parent, how am I supposed to educate my son and help him when I don't have the tools to do that? I am also on disability, which I do return back to work in January. Unfortunately, because we are in military, I work full-time. My husband works full-time. We don't have family here. Child care here has been very limited. So for my kid to be here by himself and struggle, it's hard for him and it's hard for us to help him succeed. Now, my daughter, who's in 9th grade, we moved here in Oceanside during the transition of COVID. She not only has no friends here, no outlet, but now she's suffering from depression, and I'm afraid of suicide thoughts because of that. I really hope and enhance you guys and encourage you guys to open schools. Not virtually, because honestly, it's not helping my son and it's not helping anyone, but open it full time. If private schools are doing it and there's no cases or very minimal cases because they are private schools, why aren't we doing that to our kids here? Our school that we're going to with my son have implemented every safety and security that they have, and we've had no cases. So I really encourage you guys to not do this for yourselves, but do this for our kids. My kids are being so distraught mentally, physically, emotionally. Me as a parent, I can't do anything but try to support that, but I can't help and support my children when we don't have the tools to do that. I really hope you guys could reconsider to reopen, maybe not full-time, but open it part-time, at least full days part-time and not half days. Thank you guys for the time. I really appreciate it. And I really hope that you guys could reconsider trying to open up.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for your comments.
Jessica, please reach out to staff with your information. Okay.
Yeah.
About your
Thank
daughter.
you.
Just to make sure that we can connect anything we can.
Next speaker, Nicola Osgood.
Hi. Sorry, I just had my note and it disappeared. All right, here we go. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for everything that you guys have all done, members of the board, everybody in the school district. You guys are not in easy positions, and I certainly don't envy you at this time. I just have one question and then a request. My question is, why were parents not given the opportunity to self-quarantine without penalty after traveling over fall and Thanksgiving break? It's my understanding that like Fallbrook apparently had the opportunity, but you know, a lot of people were going to travel regardless of recommendations. And I think that providing that opportunity going forward with whatever you guys decide to quarantine the kids without incurring absences or something would be beneficial. For example, my daughter, she is in 3rd grade at North Harris, and I am legally required to send her to her father for visitation over the Christmas period. And if we're still in hybrid, 2 weeks after she returns, she's going to be staying home. And hopefully that doesn't incur too many penalties. I think that might be a good option to reduce cases or prevent additional outbreaks, because I know that there are many people who are COVID conscious as I am, but at the same time do want their kids involved in stuff. And so, you know, that might be kind of a bit of a middle ground. And then my request was similar to what Mr. Clemente Gomez said earlier, is that if we do return to virtual learning, the only reason that I'm frustrated about this whole thing is just the transitions back and forth between virtual learning and now hybrid and now virtual, and then go back to hybrid and then maybe full, and then who knows. It can be really frustrating for the kids to make those transitions. And so if there's a good point that we made where we, you know, there's only 1 week before Christmas break, maybe we could wait and reevaluate after Christmas break, but the fewer transitions, the better. You service a lot of military families, and these kids have to deal with so many transitions as is. Any reduction to that would be great. And that's pretty much all I had. 30 seconds left. Yay me. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the comments and we'll take them on board. Thank you.
Patricia Duarte. Patricia Cueva Duarte. Okay, we'll wait till we promote her to the panel. Oh yeah. So we'll go with Amy Simpson.
Hi, thank you for having me on today. I'm expressing my concerns as with almost all parents I know right now. We are concerned with our children being pulled out aggressively once again. I understand your concern with the numbers, but we really need to look closely more at how this affects our children. My children have been doing absolutely wonderful since we've at least had this few times that we've had back. And my youngest son is in kinder, which has been the hardest. He really struggled virtually learning. It was the most horrible experience for him. And I actually thought about maybe having to hold him back and pulling him out. But once we started and went back to school, he has been doing amazing. He's reading, he's writing, He loves it. He tells me every time I pick him up on those 2 days, for those 3 hours he goes each day, how great it was to be there. I do have another son in 3rd grade. He is also on the spectrum. He has a special needs. He has struggled immensely with the virtual learning. Socially, it has pulled him down a lot. Since he's gone back, it's been so much better. It got to the point where he thought his best friend was the mailman because there was no interaction with other kids. He lost that social aspect of him that is part of his IEP. We need our kids at school. They have 1 week left, and then we're off for 3 weeks. 1 week. We are asking, we are begging you as parents here. We need our children to at least finish this next week. They absolutely need this. This is not fair to them. You're disrupting their behaviors. Mentally, emotionally, they're a mess. I can't tell you how many friends I've spoke to that all have kids at school that said the same thing. Our kids are acting out in ways they've never acted out before. And you can give us all these tools and all this virtual stuff, but it doesn't help. What helps them is for them to be at school. So I'm asking you as a parent, and not just me, I can give you thousands of other people too that want our children to stay. Let us finish our week. You guys can reevaluate over winter break. We can decide then as to what situations we need to do, but at least give them that. Give them that. And I can also tell you something. I was there the day we started back. I am a PTO member at my school. And I can tell you, I had several of Oceanside School District members come up to me and tell us what a wonderful thing we've done and how great it went and how smooth it went. So we as parents are working just as hard to try to make sure we keep our kids safe and our teachers safe. I really do hope you consider this, and I really hope you don't just push through what you guys think and you actually listen to us parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Next speaker, Elizabeth Reeves. Next speaker is Elizabeth Reeves, and if you could unmute yourself.
Hello. Oh, okay. I was on the phone.
There you go. We see you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, great. I'm Elizabeth Reeves. I have 2 children in elementary school, 1st and 5th grade. First, I would like to recommend that the school district not get out in front of the public health officer for the county, on whom we would generally rely on for recommendations on risk and closures based on a variety of evidence sources. I do have some concerns about how our decision to close, if made prematurely, would inadvertently delay our schools from reopening in the future based on current guidelines. Secondly, I'd like to offer that the virtual environment, like for many others, has been particularly challenging for our younger elementary students, particularly K through 2, who are really just beginning to develop the basic literacy skills that are essential for independent learning and interaction with technology. They're also the most vulnerable to home and childcare environments that may or may not be conducive to ongoing educational programs. I'd very much like to hear from the board or the school system as to whether there are some more flexible approaches that could be available and applicable to our children who may be challenged with the remote learning time, meeting schedules, assignment timelines, learning assessments, etc. I do have particular concerns, like other callers, for our military population who is doubly vulnerable to frequent transfers to different regions that have varying scholastic standards. Lastly, like many of you, I have some considerable concerns about learning loss, and I'm interested in plans to address this inevitability. The school calendar still includes about 5 additional weeks of school break prior to the end of the year, which I think could be better utilized to help maintain the children's education, even if it's voluntary or remotely. Some guidance on how to continue to support the learning through these times would be helpful for parents. I strongly would encourage the school district now to plan for access to some enrichment activities, for both our students who might be struggling and those who are thriving but aren't having the access to the supportive instructional materials they normally would in a classroom. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Victoria Mariani.
Good afternoon, board members, district staff, teachers, families, and community members. I'm Victoria Mariani, fifth grade teacher and 20-year employee of OUSD. I'm still in shock after receiving the impromptu news of this emergency board meeting and proposed return to virtual learning yesterday at 2:52 p.m. While I acknowledge the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, I would be remiss if I didn't speak up about the inconsistent decision-making of district leaders and the catalytic effect that it has had on the roller coaster ride that is distance learning. At a previous board meeting, I was dismayed at what I describe as district leadership's parade of marionette teachers who lauded distance learning, stating that students had better attendance, higher assignment completion rates, and better test scores. Attendance may be noted as being 97%, but students are being marked present for simply checking into a classroom stream, joining a Google Meet without their camera on or any verbal participation in class, and for doing any inkling of work, including visiting digital platforms such as Epic Books. And yes, assignment completion and test scores may have increased in middle and high school, simply because one, these students are stuck at home, bored with nothing to do, and two, there is no accountability for cheating or dishonesty, and students can readily search information on their cell phones to get answers unbeknownst to teachers. That is not an actual improvement in learning outcomes. It just means that our students are clever and tech savvy. Another point of contention and frustration that I have endured is the utter lack of listening to practitioners from district leadership. I spoke at the last board meeting about the district's lack of clarity on their plan to return to hybrid learning on November 9th and how it would impact families who wish to remain virtual for the remainder of the school year. I described how this vagueness would result in mass exodus from neighborhood schools to Surfside Academy. And I proposed a cohort C, students who stay with their current teacher, do work posted in a Google Classroom, meet daily at 2 p.m. for instruction, and attend whole class Wednesday virtual learning, all under the guidance of their parents. And although board members asked essential questions and had a lengthy discussion after my speech, I was yet again ignored by district leaders. As I predicted, a plethora of students from every district elementary school signed up for Surfside Academy in the subsequent weeks following the return to hybrid learning, resulting in classrooms being collapsed, students being shifted, and teachers being relocated to different schools. Is this really in the best interest of our students, especially when it could have been totally avoided if district leadership could come down from their ivory tower and entertain the thought of listening to the advice of people whose boots are on the ground? In light of the proposed return to total distance learning for all scholars, the entire hybrid learning fiasco could have been avoided by just keeping us in distance learning, or at the very least minimized by keeping us in hybrid learning for the last week before winter break. If we can be exposed for 4 weeks, then we can be exposed for 5 weeks. That would at least give parents 3 weeks to accommodate logistical changes and childcare arrangements versus a weekend. I cannot emphasize enough that constant changes and inconsistency are negatively impacting our scholars. Please pick a position and stick with it for the sake of our students. And please, I implore you, listen to the people who actually live in the world created by the narrative of district leaders and subsequent decisions of our esteemed board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Victoria.
Next speaker, Kelsey Thorne.
Just want to check, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just double checking. Thank you. Good afternoon, board members and Superintendent Vitale. Thank you for giving us this time to speak on this decision. My name is Kelsey Thorne. I am a first grade teacher at Mission Elementary, and this is my 7th year teaching in this school district. I'm speaking today because I am asking you to really consider allowing schools to remain open through next week. I am fully aware of the rising numbers. In the stay-at-home order, our state is facing, sorry, my thing keeps closing. Our state is facing. At the same time, I'm aware that my job as a teacher is to instruct my students both academically as well as keep them healthy and safe. I have felt that all the things the school district has put in place in order to be a hybrid model has allowed us to be safe and healthy in our schools. But I realize that we have no control of outside factors. Are students staying home, going on vacations, going out to restaurants and parks and beaches? I have no control over that. What I have control of is what is happening in my classroom. To say the school year has been hard would be an understatement. It has been hard for us as teachers and for our families, but most of all for our students. Just like Victoria said, and other teachers have said today, and parents have said today, we constantly talk about what we are doing, what is right for students and putting them first. Ripping them out of school with 1 week left would not be what's right for students. This is a season of joy. Our students need joy the most right now to end 2020. I have prepared fun things for them to do in our classroom next week. And if I get to go virtual, we can't do those fun things. Every day they come on campus, they have their big smiling faces and I can see them under their masks. And they give me their air hugs and they give me their air fives. It's not the same virtually. Every day I have seen my students struggle with virtual learning. Less and less students are showing up on Zoom and less students are completing work on Seesaw. It's not their fault, it's not my fault, it's just what it is. They're burnt out on Zoom, I'm burnt out on Zoom, and they're burnt out of doing online work. To close out this year virtually would be so sad, and I can sense that my students will start checking out early. Every day next week, there will be 1 less kid, 2 less kids, 4 less kids. Soon on Friday, there will be none. I'm not saying I can't do it virtually. I know I can, but it's going to be different. Just please consider all factors. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Next speaker, Tony Chen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Tony Chen and I have 2 daughters, one in kindergarten and one in 2nd grade in North Terrace. It's very good to know that this board and this board members are assessing the data and trying to make a scientific decisions based on the data available. But please also don't forget the infection rate among young kids is very, very low comparing to the rest of the populations. So I don't know how much risk we are going to have just to maintain 1 more week of school open. So again, another thing is that whatever the model that we want to have, either it's a distant learning, or the virtual learning, or in-person learning, we just need to make it consistent. If it's a virtual learning, then we should have a virtual learning throughout at least 1 quarter or at least half of the school year without having like switching back and forth like this. Whatever the decisions that we made, whatever the decisions that you made, you should be responsible for it, not to worry about being criticized for it. When the rates, the COVID-19 infection rates are going down, you don't want to take the responsibility or take the criticism of being closed. So you open up, make out a virtual learning environment, half, and then the other half goes to school. There's hybrid systems. And now the COVID-19 rate is going back up again, and you don't want to take the risk of having very, very few infection rate in one school. So you're trying to shut down the hybrid systems that we just had for about 1 month. I understand this is also a very difficult decision, but please, whatever the decisions that you make, you just have to own it, either A or either B, but not A or B switch like back and forth like this, and it's not good for students, not good for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it.
Next speaker, Daniela Solis.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So I just want to start off with saying thank you so much for taking the time to listening to all of us here today. So my name is Daniela, and I'm an OUSD parent elementary. I'm also a member of the Human Rights Council of Oceanside, And I'd like to take time right now to share with you the importance of reinstating virtual learning for our community schools for the remainder of the school year. So our district must understand that students in our community and their families are trying to survive a global pandemic, and the death rates are disproportionately representing Black, Indigenous, and Latinx people across our communities. Oceanside is a largely diverse community, and Black and Latinx families largely represent the population that OUSD serves. Opening up our schools in the middle of this pandemic was something that should not have happened to begin with. I appreciate the advocacy of many of our board members here and our district leaders on trying to meet the needs of the most vulnerable students in our community. But it is so important to address these needs of our students without putting them, our educators, and our community at risk. I can speak for myself and for many others that we do want our kids back in school. We want them learning alongside their peers, but we also want them and our community safe. The district has implemented COVID safety policies and offered a virtual learning alternative. They gave families really only two options, either to risk the health and safety of their child by returning to in-person or be forced out of their neighborhood school if they'd like to stay virtual. These were not the answer. We understand that these are some very challenging times, and many of these things are out of our control. But one thing that our school district does have control of, our school district failed to provide this for our students and for our community, and that was to provide consistency. COVID-19 has caused children to have an all-time high of anxiety, impacting their mental health, the uncertainty on the decisions of our district on what they're gonna decide on our children's learning. It doesn't make things any better. The inconsistency in our schedules and the routines that our children have had to transition in and out of, with virtual to hybrid to back to virtual for many students that have had to quarantine after a COVID-19 exposure. And even the students that stayed virtual, they had to change to a whole new school, a new teacher, new classmates, adapting to new routines and teaching styles. Many teachers were pulled out of their classrooms and students were switched around in order to accommodate many changes. And even so, many students continue to be left in limbo, not receiving academic support as other students because they're not currently being accepted at Surfside. These major transitions, the inconsistent schedules and routines have only contributed to the rising stress, anxiety, and uncertainty that our students are currently feeling. It is the responsibility of our district to provide a learning environment for the children in our community that can provide them with a sense of security in the middle of these very challenging times. OUSD should be the right decision to reinstate virtual learning for the remainder of the school year in order to protect their mental and physical health of our students and keep our educators and community safe.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker, Desiree Thema. You will need to unmute yourself, Desiree. Desiree Thema, you're up for speaking.
We may have the wrong Desiree. We're just looking, so just give us a moment, please. There's no last name attached. Stand by. Mike, that's the last public comment.
That's the last comment? Okay. Wonderful. Shall we open it up for discussion amongst ourselves? Who would like to lead off?
I have a quick question. I don't know if somebody has the numbers, and I know I should have probably asked sooner, but how many, so when we started hybrid, what do our numbers look now as compared to what it was back when we first started hybrid initially?
Attendance numbers, enrollment.
Yes, attendance, enrollment, like what the students hybrid wise, like who's attending and what does those numbers look like?
So there are two different numbers that staff can be looking for while I clarify your question, Raquel. Enrollment numbers or attendance numbers?
Attendance.
Okay, so attendance will give us the percentage of students that are engaging in various ways. And I think Dr. Jordy Sparks can speak to this. He's probably looking for the exact numbers right now as this question is asked, as is Dr. Lovey. And she can explain to you how attendance is taken. It is different because of the COVID situation, and it has been a moving target. So she can explain that attendance to you, and we can also provide you attendance rates. Go ahead, Mercedes.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Vitale, and thank you, Trustee Alvarez, for asking the question. We have been carefully tracking attendance. Traditionally in schools, we have always tracked attendance by people who are in front of the teacher. When we started with COVID-19 and hybrid learning and virtual learning, what we realized is that we needed to make sure that we gave as many opportunities to reduce inequities between students who might have had connectivity issues, students who may have had health issues, and so that students would receive credit for attendance in a variety of ways. As one of the speakers talked about, one of those ways is logging into a Zoom meeting. In hybrid, it is coming to school in person. It can be completing work that is posted on the Google Classroom or the Seesaw. All of these count as attendance. We even have some attendance codes that talk about if you didn't come, it's because perhaps you had an internet outage or something like that, because we want to make sure that we are providing students with every opportunity to get credit for attendance. As one of the speakers had said, they want to make sure that their children get credit for attendance. In looking at the week prior to hybrid, we were finding that students who were present across our district ranged between 96.27 to 96.75 of students who were marked as present. And then we also had a small number who were engaged and not present. So we were about a 96 to 95% of students who were getting credit. And mostly that was often with them logging into a Zoom session. In the week of November 10th through 11th, and over the last week from the November 30th through December 3rd, we are seeing about 91 to 92% present in that. So we have had a reduction in students who are being marked as present once we move to hybrid. Dr. Sparks, do you have anything to add on to that?
No, thank you, Dr. Libby. I think you captured those well. We noticed about a 3 to almost 4% decrease in attendance, which includes attendance and engagement, and how we're tracking it according to Senate Bill 98. But prior to hybrid, the number you shared was correct, right around 96%, between 96 to 97%. And now we're sitting at about 93%, just above that, as of the 4th of December, when the last time we captured our weekly data.
So can I ask you, Dr. Jordy?
Go ahead, Stacey.
So I think for the audience out there, we need to distinguish between attendance and enrollment because they are confusing. So as a parent, and a board member, I want to know how many students did we lose when we went to hybrid?
I think we're actually looking, I want number as to like students by body, like I don't want a percentage. I'm trying to figure out like what numbers we're looking at. So when we went hybrid in elementary, what numbers are we looking at? As what did we fluctuate and what did we change body wise with hybrid going on and with everything going on right now?
I can look those up. Last we checked that last week, we were looking at about a fluctuation of about 20 students across the district. So not disaggregating out for elementary versus secondary. Our enrollment goes up and down every day. We have students who are moving. We have military families who are getting new orders. So based on our daily ARIES, we are seeing it's pretty in a district with about 16,500 students, 20 students up or down is a small and expected amount. So we did not see a huge number of people leaving our district, but we did see a reduction in students who are coming each day.
Can I ask a qualifying question? The attendance. Could a student set up their iPad, join a Zoom, and then not really participate and get credit for their attendance in pre-hybrid or in the virtual setting? Would that still count for attendance?
Yes, Mr. Joyce.
So it's just complicated. I just want to be clear with everyone that it is a complicated metric, and attendance and participation aren't necessarily strongly related, although there's a correlation, I'm sure.
I think the point that you can only take was from what Mercedes said was that we're not losing kids leaving the district of significant numbers in this last 30, 40, 60 days, I guess. That's the only takeaway I can get out of this. A concern, if there was a concern about that. Are there other questions for staff or discussion points for the?
I do. I had some. I was going to go last just in case.
Sure. Well, let me
I can go now. It's fine.
Raquel, did you finish with your line of questioning there? I'm sorry, I didn't mean.
No, go ahead. I have others, but go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I want to just, before I get into, this is a difficult conversation, so I just want to recognize how serious the current rise in cases is. The current rise in positivity especially highlights that. I want to recognize the feelings that people are feeling, because I'm feeling them too. I wake up, I've woken up several times very late at night and been unable to go back to sleep because I'm worried that the other day I woke up and I tried to smell things because I thought I was losing my sense of smell, and it was just, I had a stuffed up nose, but I woke up half asleep and half awake, just freaked out because it's a scary and stressful time for everybody. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that it's not, you're not alone in that feeling. It is a scary time. And part of the problem is that we're having to juggle these ideas of what it was like going into a pandemic with no information about the virus, and now learning more and more about the virus and trying to update our brains and our fears and our understandings and expectations with the newest information is really hard to do. So I'm struggling with that as well, and I just wanted to start there. I had, my first question was brought up by Mrs. Templeton before me. She beat me to it, and I just wanted to say, how many substitutes do we currently have covering a second cohort of a quarantine class? So right now our system is that if a teacher is quarantined, sorry, this is the only quiet space in the house. It's not so quiet right now, but if we have a teacher that is quarantined with one of her cohorts or one of his cohorts, their other cohort is currently attending in class the other 2 days with substitutes. So what are our numbers? Like we had the numbers for today. What number of those subs or unfilled subs are covering a quarantine class?
Hi, Board Member Joyce. We have approximately about 3 teachers out right now that are quarantined. So they all are classroom teachers with cohorts that have been affected. Those numbers change, as you know. We only count the active cases. So once you're tested, you have 10 days that you're considered active, that you would be quarantined. And then after that, you'd be back to instruction. So that is why there's some changes in the dashboard is as staff comes on, other staff might be coming off depending on how long they are in that process.
So to alleviate some of our sub shortage, because I kind of see these as 2 things, right? There's a health and then there's the sub shortage. So I'm going to talk and ask questions about the sub shortage first and see if we can talk about that as an independent situation. So
Correct. Ms. Templeton had the right idea
what,
in terms of helping support with subs, that we could eliminate that, and that would save that sub by just going to virtual in that model. So it's a good idea. We were trying to have all kids have the opportunity to be in class. So our intentions at the beginning were every kid that could be in-person instruction, we were trying to provide an able body and an instructor for them to come. So it solves one issue and creates another, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I like that instinct to make sure that our kids can be in the schools if they're not needing to be quarantined. But this may be something that we have to look at if we're going to be teaching in a pandemic. So I really appreciate her suggestion, and that's actually what the district that I teach in does. So I know that others are doing that. What other? So. When we return, if we continue next week, what are other solutions or ideas that we have for the sub shortage? I know it's regional, but I know that all districts are tackling it in different ways. What are we gleaning from other districts about how they're managing it?
Some of the ideas that I shared is obviously to increase pay. That does two things. It keeps our subs from going off to other districts that have also increased their pay. So it becomes a competition between districts fighting for a resource. It's almost a lesson in economics, right? So there's a diminishing resource. Everyone is fighting for it and willing to pay more for it. So that's one potential. We've also created what we call residential subs. So these are full-time subs that can be available. They're on call every day, 5 days a week to help fill in those needs. We are seeing, there's been some comments made, which I appreciate, that our schools are safe. So we do know that for the most part, when staff and students are on campus, we're not seeing transmission of COVID-19. So we do know for the most part, as long as we continue with our PPE and follow those protocols and safety practices, that does help make our schools a safe place. The problem is it's just so prevalent outside of the schools that our challenge has been staff getting sick and kids getting sick coming to school, and then it's a close contact, and we spiral into this challenge of close contact where we have to quarantine. And that's becoming my greatest concern in HR, is the projected path that I see is more and more outside people coming in sick, and then we have to quarantine and shut down. And that's where it's getting really difficult. And I only see that increasing. I can't see it slowing down right now just based on our community numbers. So that's probably the biggest reason and biggest concern in HR is it's not slowing down, it's accelerating almost exponentially. And we're already close to a breaking point where we just don't have enough resources to cover classrooms anymore adequately, which then goes into the next problem of, unsupervised kids at schools. And that's something we certainly don't want to have happen.
Okay, so we definitely have a short-term problem with staffing, and we're gonna have to figure something out because the pandemic isn't going to be gone in January, and we do have
Vaccines are on the horizon.
But we're 1B, and that couldn't. I mean, I think it's worth talking about. That's going to be at the earliest the summertime. That's what I'm thinking. And if we know that the virus is not transmitting in the schools, then we've got to figure out how to set the schools up to be operational when we're in a pandemic mode. So I know that's it's beyond difficult task. And this current moment, the cases have gone up so sharply that we're seeing something that was hard to see coming. And so I recognize everybody, and I appreciate a staffing shortage sounds like a not as serious thing until you think about what happens when your administrators are in the classroom teaching and an emergency happens that they're supposed to be the ones responding to. Right. So from inside of a school, it is a serious thing to consider to have your administrators all in the classrooms responsible for 16 to 20 kids, it's a big deal. Okay, so why are we choosing not to close or go virtual by the most impacted schools?
What do you mean by that?
Has that been considered? So if we have quarantined classes, and are we seeing the sub shortage, the staffing shortage I mean, I know that there's some district wide, but is it acute in certain schools, or is it so spread out that it wouldn't make sense to close specific schools because of that? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's another great question. What we're seeing is, between 40 and 50 certificated staff members spread out. It's not really at one school at all. We have at least one almost at every school now, and up to 4 or 5. So obviously the 4 or 5 numbers get more concerning, and that's where we've been throwing more resources at those impacted schools, but it shifts. So I can tell you that I don't want to name schools, but one school it's 4 this week, another week it's 4 at another school that we're down. So it hasn't been consistent. We're not seeing, like a particular area, one school site that's hit hard. I'm seeing a consistent level rising across all. It feels like the water level's just going up, and we're just seeing it across all of our schools right now.
Okay. Thank you. Raquel,
Thank
do you
you,
want to
Todd.
go? I have to collect my other pieces together.
I have a few
That's what you
comments.
Just ask my question of them. So go ahead, Stacey.
I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying, Todd. This issue is about safety and sustainability of staffing, which is, like Eric said, it's regional. It's happening all over North County, San Diego, and South County, San Diego, to districts that are still doing hybrid instruction. So this is impacting safety and supervision of the students on campus. Is that correct, Todd?
That's correct. And the rates and the indicators are it's getting worse, and that's what's concerning.
Okay. And then one thing you didn't mention is the wear and tear. I always look at staff morale, our employee morale, and the impact it has on burnout. I mean, if you're telling me that principals are doing 2 to 3 jobs where they're covering special ed teachers, covering classrooms, and then they have to do their job, which is communicate with parents and et cetera. I mean, we can't continue to do it at the rate that we're doing it right now. That's my concern.
That is the concern, Stacy, in addition to our our elementary APs and elementary principals covering classes. We've had secondary APs and secondary principals cover classes, as well as district office coordinators, directors, and our associate superintendent. That's how deep into this we are.
That's deep.
And if the numbers go up, we're gonna, it's
Board member.
they are going up. So yeah, and we're only talking about 5 days, 4 days of in-person instruction, because Wednesdays are virtual.
Right. Right.
And I have no other way to say it, by the hair on our chinny chin, we're making it through today and tomorrow. With all of those people that I mentioned. And we had very little confidence that we could make it into next week and cover the appropriate classes. The amount of time that we need.
It's Eleanor Evans. It's been my experience, especially the week before the holiday, there is a even more increase in the decrease of number of subs available. And there's also an increase in the absentee of students. Parents take off for various vacations or family visits. So I think next week is going to be real critical in terms of us providing for the safety of our students, in terms of just having adult supervision, prudential adult supervision, as well as the safety of our students in terms of their exposure to this virus. Or even though we keep saying students do not suffer the same way adults do, we do know they do carry it. And now lately, scientists have been saying that students are getting an even worse kind of, I guess, subset disease from the virus. It's been on the news the past 2 days, MIS or MTS. So I think it would be nice if everyone, we all were here next week, but I don't think that's going to be a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. Raquel, you got any more, or Stacy, before Eric has some more? And then I'll entertain a motion from anyone on the floor. But Eric, you collect your thoughts, or we could take
Looked like Stacy was about to speak.
Oh, I was going to make a motion. So go ahead. Please ask your questions.
No,
I'd love to hear. No, go for it. I want to hear the answers if they're important.
So under this recommendation, what would happen to our special ed population? Would they go completely virtual as well?
Yes, we're recommending all elementary.
Have we received recommendation from the state to close because it's unsafe environments in our classrooms?
No, I want to make it very clear. We're not closing and even recommending closing because of any safety issues at all. I appreciate the speakers that have clarified that they feel very safe in our schools with all of the safety precautions and layers that we've built into our schools. Those were very appreciated comments. I just want to reiterate that the biggest concern is being able to cover the classes with adults in the room with children. And again, this is the furthest thing from what I wanted to recommend to this board. Priority, and I understand it's a priority to stay in school. Even though we had varying, perspectives and comments on that, the way this is related to the rise in cases is because of our inability to, the amount of people on quarantine and our inability to provide substitutes, both classified and certificated, in our schools. We had put an entire system together through the generosity, and I'll say generosity, of our secondary administrators and our district office administrators signed up, and I think gleefully, to substitute for classes. And we put it in as just a Band-Aid system. And it is our belief that that Band-Aid is not going to hold. And that is why, we're here right now. Because we can't even take one additional person being out of the classroom. So if we just had even one more, it would be a breaking point, and we would literally be turning kids away at the curb. And we did not want it to get to that situation. So certainly the recommendation, could be altered. It could be altered to, go to the distance learning situation until the new school year. All of our teachers, Todd, if I'm correct, would be out of quarantine at that point. So we'd have a full staff again. We could institute the idea of, if you go down for quarantine, you don't go down half cohort, you go down full class. So that would minimize the number of subs that we need as well. So this is the recommendation based on what we believe. Well, first of all, the situation we know we're in now for next week. And if I thought that there was any way that we could get through next week, we wouldn't be here right now. But to alter the recommendation to put us back into virtual for a week, come back in January, and start fresh with the idea, we're just taking the risk of not having the sub situation again, but I cannot predict how many weeks out that might be. It might happen, it might not. And if we do things a little bit differently with that approach, that might be very helpful. So that is a possibility. That is our recommendation, and to alter that would be very fine.
Could we keep it open for our elementary? Sorry, it says my internet's stable. I hope you can hear me. Could we keep it open for our elementary special educating teachers to entertain cohorts next week? the sub and coverage shortage wouldn't apply if they are able and willing to do so. So I'd like to make a motion that we suspend in-class learning and go virtual for the next week and plan a return to in-person learning 1 week after we are scheduled to return, so that we have a full understanding of case rate and positivity rate increases over the holiday. We have an extra long December break, so that gives us an extra week on other districts. And this also gives us a chance to let families that are traveling, even though please families don't travel, that families that are traveling over the December holiday break to safely re-enter our schools after the period of time has passed. So that's the motion that I'd like to make on the floor.
That was really, you reiterate. So Eric, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So did you make the motion that you would like to pivot to virtual now and return 1 week after break, which in looking, our break ends on January 8th. So kids would be returning January 11th. A week later, 18th is Martin Luther King Day. So January 19th would be the day, would be 1 week after we return to give us time to assess. That would also.
So we would have 2 weeks of virtual learning, yeah, with cohorts for special ed.
Okay, so the motion is on the floor is to pivot to virtual effective Monday and stay in virtual until January 19th.
Eric, would you be up for the friendly amendment where at our board meeting, January 12th, we could make that decision? Because I'm really, honestly, I'm worried about that we're in that deep purple tier, our numbers going up after break. And I'm that just it really concerns me, not just for the sustainability piece. The parents that I spoke to today, when their child's teacher goes out on, goes out, it really puts a lot of stress on the kids because they're worried about their teacher. I mean, it's scary. I mean, it's a scary thing we're putting our elementary students through right now when their teacher goes out on quarantine, half the class is out. It's just scary. I would rather have us have a conversation and have the district bring us more information at our January board meeting about how we could do things differently to keep it sustainable and provide some more time to look at the data.
I agree with that. Go ahead, Mick. Go ahead.
I'm concerned too. This is a holiday. Within the cultures, this time of year is huge. And I know families are going to be traveling, back and forth. And I think we really need time to analyze, where we are in terms of our students and where we are in terms of the pandemic. So as a point, I think I would be supportive of us. I would be supportive of Dr. Beegan's friendly amendment.
And I'll
make that point.
And for myself, I know, because we're in the community a lot, and I know myself, being out in the community and still talking to families within our community. I know for a lot of communities that I'm dealing with personally, and people that I've spoken to on the phone, especially the last few days, because we are on a 3-week break, a lot of our families are taking their children to other family members because they're having to work because they are essential workers. So then they're going to pick them up before they come back, or when they were due to come back. So they were going to pick them up. And then the concern was going to be that who is going to be exposed in whatever way with those family members. Because some of them and many of them were going to be bringing their children to people in Mexico or family members in Mexico and other areas of the country. So it's just my concern, like with Dr. Beegan, is that exposure is out there, and then bringing that back in. And if we're going already with the shortage of our subs, and we're going with the shortage of or just the concern of what's going on with our families, then in speaking with those families within our community, especially in the last couple of days, I already, you can see the gray. I already don't sleep because I worry, and I'm out there talking to different people. So the stress level is within our students because of now that cohort is out, or did that cohort, because that teacher was infected, like, you know, Dr. Began said, they're struggling, the students are struggling themselves. And so how much more are we going to put on them if we come back too soon, and then something major happens within a classroom, whether it be with a student or a student's family member, and then they're going to have to deal or process that as a group, as a cohort, because of what's going on. So I you know, as much as I appreciate, Eric, you know, where you're at and what you're saying, I have to also side with Dr. Began and where we're at right now with all of this, and where we're looking and dates wise as far as coming back.
I'm trying to get clear here on Stacy, what your friendly amendment really does, because all I heard was, I mean, the staff recommendation is go to virtual beginning Monday and until further direction. And that to me is pretty simplistic. It's very clear, but we also, maybe it takes a secondary motion or something to direct staff to come back. I would expect them to come back in January at our January 12th meeting and talk to us about where we're at. And we'll be looking at the numbers and everything in terms of our situation. So I don't see, you know, where your motion is at, Stacy. I don't support where Eric's going right now as the mandate.
So Eric doesn't have a second right now. Does anybody second Eric?
So
No one has.
we've had discussion on the motion. Can I speak to the motion?
Sure, yes.
So we would, on the 12th, we would discuss what to do next, no matter what. I'm setting a return date. The only thing that's different is that there's a set date for return date up until that meeting on the 12th. I would even be open to having our meeting a week earlier if we wanted to do it 2 weeks ahead of that set return date. The point is that this COVID is not going away, and we are asked to be open in the purple if there are acute situations like the one we're in right now, where we need to figure out a plan to deal with subbing and to make sure that we can cover our kids in schools, then we absolutely should take the time and adjust that plan right now, which I fully support. But when we come on the other side of the break, we've got to be ready with a plan to get going, and to not have a date for parents to have in their head. If we don't have any metric for coming back, how do we know when to come back? And this gives us a set date to be working out a plan for coverage that is irrespective of other factors that we know already are there. So I would be up for amending the motion to move our board meeting earlier, to discuss earlier. I'd be up for making sure that we discuss that reopening plan on the 12th. But at this moment, I don't accept the friendly moment.
All right, so that motion dies for lack of a second. I tell you what, guys, I'm really nervous about the purple numbers and the purple tier that we're in. And in point of fact, you guys all know this, we all know this, we were 1 day away from not being able to open elementary whatsoever, irregardless of any other enhancement and enrichment programs we could have come up with for SPED or all the other kids. We were 1 day from that. We're 3 times now those numbers. We're not at just 7% case rate, we're at 23%. That's not going to lower, in my estimation, in the next 45 days, 60 days. So I don't want to set up a false hope that we have this, that the target date out here means something. I want to just get real with it. I think we should work on different ways to deal with this thing, as you suggested. This gives direction to staff, but at this juncture, I don't feel comfortable doing anything other than just going back to virtual with our elementary kids. and directing staff to move forward as you have kind of indicated there. And staff has indicated, I think I heard Julie say they would look at that stuff in terms of how we deal with the cohorts. The whole cohort separation issue raises a whole set of complications. You say you're working with it, Eric, so you've got a feel for that, but Raquel raised issues there about all the kids in the classes and half their kids are there and not there, and that's the stress of all that. So that's pretty intense. So that I need to get my head around that whole issue. I don't have any metrics for that myself. So I'd like to just keep it at this moment. I don't think anybody loses any ground anywhere. So I'm just sitting with a staff recommendation from my perspective. So has anybody got the motion to that effect?
I would like to make a motion that we accept the staff recommendation to pivot elementary to virtual learning on Monday, December 14th. We will reevaluate January 12th board meeting on when we should reopen and when it's safe and we have a sustainable.
I will second that motion.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Is there any need for further discussion or clarification?
Yeah, I do have a clarifying question. Nothing was spoken about with special education students in that motion or within that realm. So does that mean it limits the ability of our teachers to hold cohorts, or it permits them to hold cohorts?
I'll defer that to Julie.
Julie was pretty clear that the all means all in the case.
Okay, right.
However, we were permitted to do cohorts before fully opening our schools. So that has never been limited, no matter what the numbers have been. So that is a technicality that would need to be clarified.
So you could amend.
Talking about closing. Sorry.
When do you guys go?
So talking about closing our schools to broad-based in-person instruction doesn't necessarily prevent cohorting, and that's a clarification that I think is important.
Julie?
I don't think we need a motion to do that, but Julie could correct me if I am wrong.
I think we need to get away from the term of closing the schools. We're not closing the schools. We're going in a different direction.
Pivoting to virtual. Yes.
I think that's real important.
Yep. And staff, and I trust that Julie and staff will carry on with, what the teachers are going to be. I presume half the teachers were teaching it from the classroom prior to this, so I would assume most would do that again, and so there'll be activity there. So, but however staff was working it out in the past on the special ed issue, they're free to negotiate and discuss that issue with staff, I would say.
So do we need to make a motion separate for specifically for that, or does it even have to be a motion?
Well,
I think we're trying to wait for Julie to answer that part of it too, though.
I don't think it really needs to be a motion because the motion itself is inclusive.
I agree. All right.
So now I need clarity. So, okay, here we go again. Now I need clarity that part of our staff can actually still cohort or do whatever they need to do to finish assessments and still work with our students so that they can finish doing what they need to do, and so that our students don't lose out on that part of their needs.
Yeah, I'm getting the message that you folks are saying that because we're going to go virtual, then teaching and education is going to stop with special ed students. I don't see that. I see it continuing on.
As a teacher of students with special education needs, I can tell you virtual learning is not an access point for many, many students with special needs.
I understand that. I've had many years dealing with special ed students. I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate what you're saying. But I think we need to get the message across that we're not going to stop teaching those students. And that's what it sounds like. Suddenly we're not going to. I know we're not, in reality, we're not, but go ahead.
But the context of this is that cohorting was permitted before schools were permitted to open. So the technical nature of what cohorting is not an open for in-person learning. It's about permitted under the virtual learning model. That's what I'm trying to make sure that our teachers know.
Okay, got it.
Julie, will you speak to that?
That is correct, Eric. So even if we pivot back to virtual learning, we can have small cohorts of special ed, EL, any group that we have teachers to teach in any kind of small group. Yes, we can have that. Yes, that is allowed.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Is everybody clear now on the motion and where we're going? I'm going to do a roll call. Want me to do a roll call? Or you want me to just do everybody says aye? I think let's just do, all right. Motion is to pivot to virtual beginning Monday with the caveats just noted, with no caveats really. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you guys so much. I've been told we need a 5-minute break. We have one more item. Is this everybody okay with that, or do we want to try and ram through this one?
5 minutes would be great.
5 minutes.
Okay.
Or 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
10
I hear?
minutes. 10
10
minutes. 5:15.
Set the clock 5:15-ish. Yes. Thank you, guys. There, we're coming back, huh? Whoa, what's going on with your screen there, Stace? You look like you're in a horror movie.
Sorry about that.
Just, it does that sometimes, huh?
Had to transition to my iPad.
Oh, okay.
That's the fastest 10 minutes. Cheapers.
Was it?
Yeah, I had to feed 3 dogs and
oh my gosh.
I cannot believe it took 10 minutes.
All right. Is Julie here with us too?
Can you guys not hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I just couldn't see you at that moment.
Oh,
I couldn't tell if you were there. Now I know everybody's here. Okay. Let's move on to the next item. And final item is D, a delay, consideration of delaying secondary return to in-person instruction to take the necessary actions to protect students and staff from the spread of COVID-19. Staff presentation. And we do have a couple comments too. We'll do staff presentation, public comments, and then board discussion. Julie?
Yes, we have our slide deck that Mr. Moon is putting up as we speak. So we'll have a brief staff presentation.
Okay.
A separate a separate situation from elementary.
Right.
Okay. Everybody. Raquel, can you hear me?
I can. You just sound kind of echoey and kind of like hollow out in your like a.
Yeah, at times you do. At times you do to all of it, to me too, but mostly you're fine.
Okay, so if you can't hear, I will just be speaking momentarily, but let me know if you can't hear me. This is information on our secondary schools, so our middle schools and our high schools. And we just want to take the time to provide some information on what is happening in those programs. On the next slide, we just want to remind the board that we've never technically opened up our secondary schools. And so considering what we do with secondary schools is very different. And according to the California Department of Public Health, we must be on the red tier, must be in the red tier in order to consider opening up our secondary schools, which we currently are not. So our recommendation will be to continue our secondary schools in virtual learning. We thought it was important to address that situation tonight since we were addressing elementary, as we know that our secondary families and staff will be wondering about that situation. So again, I want to say that our recommendation will be to continue secondary schools in virtual learning, and we'll reassess our secondary schools when we enter the red tier. Because once we reassess, we still have a 14-day lag time. Once we know that we're going to flip to red tier, we have a 14-day lag time, which Mercedes does a heck of a lot better of explaining than I do. So we just want to give you some updates on what's happening in secondary. So Mercedes is going to take over. She's going to give you some information on California Interscholastic Federation. So our sports programs and our secondary learning centers. Greg, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. She'll give you information on our secondary learning centers and then also supports that are happening at every secondary school. Some information that we gathered from a student survey that was sent out. And then again, we'll reiterate our recommendation. So Dr. Lovey.
Thank you, Dr. Vitale. So to update the board, we have had more guidance from CIF. Which originally had said that we would be starting some return to play here in December. And based on local conditions and advice, they've been pushing that back and will be reevaluating in January based on new health metrics and guidance. The returning sports will be tiered and modified by the state of California Blueprint for a Safer Economy, understanding that certain sports like perhaps cross country or track, where it's individual and social distancing as possible, may be returning sooner rather than sports that are full contact and require much more close contact between participants. The protocols will be distributed and established in January. And then we are continuing with conditioning, which is under the guidance that we've had since August. Next slide, please. Our secondary learning center has been a great success. It is up and running at all of our secondary schools. We have 28 classrooms of cohorted students with 301 participants that receive a support from our partners to ensure that they can focus on their learning during school hours. Next slide, please. We also asked our secondary principals to really identify the ways that we are engaging students in their classrooms. We know that one of the things that we were most thoughtful about is that socialization piece. And to give you a little bit of information on this, we have around 1,400 students across our secondary schools that are participating either in our secondary learning centers, our conditioning for sports, clubs, band practice, ROTC, and things like that. So this is Jefferson Middle School, who has been working on in-person contact, as well as also reaching out to families with supports through counseling, identifying student needs around technology and other connection items. That's Jefferson's. Next slide, please. You can see that King has clubs in continuing to work together, including yearbook and chess club. That they've been having projects for over 100 students. And we've also been very happy, and maybe you've seen some of our VAPA. So we've had virtual concerts that students have been participating in as well. Next slide, please. We also are ensuring that our counselors are reaching out with lessons that they have around wellness, and that those students who are identified either by themselves, their families, or their teachers are receiving additional personalized support. Next slide, please. In Lincoln, they have the Secondary Learning Center with 4 classrooms, 52 students, and additional students who are interested in this. We have 11 clubs that are meeting, and it really is an opportunity for students to connect. Next slide, please. At El Camino High School, we have 120 scholars in different clubs. We have 325 in ROTC and band. And additionally, we have credit recovery sessions of 6 weeks each to allow students to make up credits that they may need. Next slide, please. At Oceanside High School, they have 85 students with a goal of having 200 kids participate in the secondary learning centers. They have opportunities for kids to be part of ASB and assets with robotics and surf club. And then we also are making sure that we are looking at support groups through the counselors, specifically for girls, for seniors, and college applications. Next slide, please. At our Surfside Educational Academy, we have counseling, academic support, and also opportunities to have one-on-one supports about monitoring work completion. So our counselors are doing a great job there. Thank you. Next slide, please. We have clubs, including the Comic Arts Club, Work Experience, and the GSA that are available for students to participate in. Next slide, please. We also felt that when we were talking about secondary students, we really wanted to understand better what their experience has been with the virtual learning. And so we created a survey and we sent it out to all approximately 8,000 of our secondary students, and we had an amazing return. We had over 4,800 students return this survey with specific questions. And so you can see on this slide that students say that they are receiving assignments that help them learn. We have many students who either agree or strongly agree, 52%, and then many of the students are finding that it maybe not every day, but they are learning. Next slide, please. Students are also very clear on how they are going to be graded. They know what is expected them. So the teachers are doing a good job through their Google Classroom and through their virtual classes to explain to students what their grades will be about. Next slide. We asked also what might make it hard for students to fully engage during virtual learning at home. We wanted to find out. And so we gave some suggestions, and we also had open responses. And what we found is just generalized distractions at home was something that students found was a challenge. Some students said there was nothing being a challenge for them to engage at home. Of course, that might be biased because those who completed the survey may be more engaged. But we did find that some students were caring for siblings. And then, of course, we did find that there were students who were feeling stressed, depressed, as many people are during our pandemic, about what is happening in our world and what their futures are like. Next slide. We found that most of the students felt that they weren't sure if teachers were understanding what their life was like outside of school. I think that teachers are really focusing on the academics, and so students were experiencing that. Next slide, please. And what we note about that is why I mentioned that teachers are focusing on academics is you can see that a majority of students, 75%, said that the teachers were available to give them extra help if they needed it. So they really see their teachers as focusing on their academic health and well-being and being available for extra help. So that's really more than 75% agreed or strongly agreed that the teachers were available to give extra help if they needed it. Next slide, please. Dr. Vitale.
Yes, so with that, that leads us to our recommendation. You may recall that we were scheduled to come back after the holiday, or after our 3-week vacation, but we are still in the purple tier. So we are recommending that we continue secondary schools in virtual learning and reassess once the county enters into the red tier per the CDPH guidelines and the California Blueprint for a Safer Economy.
Okay, thank you very much, staff. We have, I understand, 2 speakers. Anne, will you call on them?
Okay. April Tenorio and Stephen Sly. April, you can go after you unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can, April.
Okay, thank you. First of all, wow, that was a very first hard part of your meeting. Thank you all for what you do for our schools and for especially calling the emergency meeting and starting the conversation. I can't agree more with what was just presented as far as holding back the opening to hybrid and secondary schools and keeping it virtual learning. And I can't decide whether I'm more happy about that because of the pandemic or because the hybrid schedule needs to be readdressed and relooked at. I think it's more important for these older students to have more teacher student time. And I think the current hybrid schedule that we were supposed to start in January is just not what's good for our students. Less teacher student time is horrible. So I hope that you guys use this time to rethink that hybrid schedule. 2 days out of 5 days, students don't have a teacher in their face or on their computer screen is just, I just see it falling apart. And I have a very good student. I just can't imagine him sitting at home with nobody on the computer. At least now with hybrid, he knows how to do it. He knows the program, and the teachers are fabulous. We have grown leaps and bounds from the beginning or the end of last year when it started to now. His teachers are engaging, encouraging. They are, we have no complaints. This works. Virtual learning works. Please, please reconsider the schedule for hybrid because it's not what's good for our students. If you can't give us better than hybrid, what you've scheduled, keep us in virtual for the rest of the school year. Just please use this time. If you decide not to send us back, use this time to look at your hybrid schedule. That is not what is best for our students. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, April. Next speaker.
Stephen Sly.
Hi, everyone. My name's Stephen Sly. I am a teacher at Oceanside High School. I sent you guys a letter the other day, which almost everyone responded to, which is really cool. First, I kind of want to just give a shout out to the admin at my school. I feel like they've done a really, really good job of keeping us informed. And another thing that I want to give a shout out to the district in general is the willingness to work with ODA. And I'm a ODA rep, and just I feel like I've been involved. I've been on the committees for working on the schedules. So thank you for the feedback on the schedules. You know, those are things that we want to take into consideration if we are going to do hybrid. And yeah, so just I feel like I've had a voice in this whole thing, which has been awesome. I know that's not happening everywhere. So I'm really thankful for that. Next thing I kind of want to talk about is I would love to be on campus with my students. I've been a few days and I've kind of handed out some art materials and things like that. And I've seen some of them and it's amazing. But I just want us all to remember that we're in the middle of a literal global health crisis like we haven't seen since like 1917. Thousands of people across our country are dying every day. It's crazy. And the fact that we're still trying to figure out like, well, how can we get kids in there and all this? And we've done a really good job of thinking of ways to keep it safe. But it just doesn't feel like now is the right time. So it's scary. I live in a house full of teachers and we're all stressed about, you know, going to work and being in person. We're worried about our kids. We're worried about our families. It's just a lot to worry about. I know, like Eric said, I've woken up multiple times. I woke up the other night and I'm like, I have COVID. I do. And I'm like trying to smell stuff. I'm like, oh no, like I'm fine. So I totally get that. A few more things. I'm involved with a few clubs on campus and had some really cool conversations with kids. And as much as they're like, man, virtual is tough, it's really hard, they understand why. And it's something that they seem to get. We were supposed to do an event. My club members decided that they're like, you know what, it's not safe. Like I just don't want to risk it. And they brought up, they're like, well, what's the risk versus the reward? So the actual risk that we're taking with people on campus is that people could die. That's like the actual risk. So that might sound facetious, but that is the risk. And what's the reward? A couple hours on campus, maybe some social interaction. But what I found is that in our clubs and in class, we've been able to do social things online. Is it as good? No, but it's better to be like alive and healthy than to try and risk that. So thank you for listening. All my colleagues and I are working really hard, and we appreciate that you give us a chance to, share a voice. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I think that concludes it. So I'll bring it back to the board for any discussion and then a motion. Seems pretty straightforward at this juncture. We can't open until we get out of purple. So we're kind of at that situation. So any discussion, questions? Motion?
I'll go last.
All right. You go last? If
Yeah.
I'm calling you. Okay.
Yeah, you can call me if you want.
Sure I will.
It's okay.
No,
So I actually don't have a lot of questions, so I can go anytime. But is there why is it necessary to do this? We can't open anyway. I guess I'm just not 100% clear. Is this more about transparency with the public so that they know that we're ultimately probably not coming back at the beginning of the next semester?
Yes, we were getting a lot of questions about that, Eric. And so we just wanted to take this opportunity to, we had officially taken action to open up. And so we wanted to take official action to delay it because when we made that decision, we were in the red tier. And so we just want to be clear with people that we cannot open and the reasons for that. And we've been getting a lot of secondary questions. And so we just wanted to alleviate some of those concerns that secondary, both families and students and staff were having.
Okay, and that's been made, and that's a hard, fast rule by the county. We don't have that call.
That's correct. And we double and triple checked because that has been something that has been interpreted differently. So we are trying not to interpret guidelines. We are trying to follow guidelines. So we talked to our connection at SDCOE, and he confirmed that the secondary learning centers that we have going on in our schools do not qualify us as open.
And then, so under the recommendation, it says when we go to the red tier, we would reconsider. What does that look like?
Mercedes would love to explain that. She's very good at explaining what that looks like and how we'd actually have a couple weeks to notify both students and staff of that situation. So Mercedes?
Thank you, Dr. Vitale. So as we look at the tiers, in order to go into the red tier from the purple tier, you actually have to score red 3 times. So what happens is the first week that we score red, we would say, and I'm going to say score red because I don't know how else to describe it. We score red, then we would notify everyone that we have a target date 3 weeks out to return. And then what we would say, okay, the second week, okay, we're still on the same positive trajectory, that we're still holding solid with the case rates being low enough. And all of those triggers that we looked at earlier in the presentation are where the health professionals and the public health professionals have indicated. And then by the third week, we'd be ready to go. So that honors our MOU with our collective bargaining groups for 10 days notice, but allows us to pivot quite quickly. We would just know by those 3 days that we would be able to do that.
Perfect. And so we could continue doing the centers that we have open right now. And I saw that some of the sites had goals for students that they wanted to continue to grow some of those secondary learning centers. So they're working on that. And then are we, do we have our working groups reviewing hybrid schedules? I know there is a task force in the assembly right now that's working on putting out basically the best in class is what they're calling it, for lack of a term. Best in class schedules that they're putting out statewide that are really model schedules? Are we continuing to work on that?
Yes, we're going to continue to look at our schedules. We want to make sure that throughout this, we have been looking at two things, right? We've been looking at the educational and health outcomes. So how do we make sure we balance those two things? And we know in secondary school, the amount of time, especially at high school for AP courses and things like this, so that students are able to score on the AP test so that they can have that college credit is really important. And so we want to make sure that whatever schedules we come up with, just like our speaker talked about, provides enough contact with teachers so that students can be successful. So that's really something that we're thinking about. And the work groups and both the speakers on this topic have been, very thoughtful, and all of our teachers have been very thoughtful about how do we make sure that we provide students with the instruction to meet the content requirements, especially when we're looking at CTE courses, college admission courses, college credit courses. So that's really exciting. And I know we're working on even more collaboration with our community colleges to help, again, boost students. So that's continuing to be an interest led by Dr. Lawrence and our high school principals.
Wonderful. And the last thing I have is that I just wanted to just put out that what we know about the virus is that it spreads differently in children that are still considered children that are above the age of 10, and this is our middle and high school kids, and that's I'm asking and kind of putting it out that this is a reason that we consider this separately from elementary, and we consider this independently as the risk is different to those populations. So I appreciate all the work.
And Eric, thank you. And additionally, the ability to cohort because of the complexity of the secondary schedules and the inability to cohort the students because of the differences in their classroom is another reason to consider it differently. So thank you for bringing that up.
All right. Thank you. I support the recommendation.
Great. Any other questions for staff?
No, but thank you for an excellent presentation. This is the group that I really worry about right now, because high school is so important, in terms of our scholars going out into the world and having a real solid foundation.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Anybody want to propose a motion?
I'll propose the motion.
To approve staff's recommendation on item D?
Correct.
Got a motion from Eleanor and a second from Raquel to approve staff's recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right. Well, that's the end of this evening's emergency meeting. Thank you guys for letting me do one more meeting than I thought I was going to be doing. Appreciate it all. Thank you. I think we had 900 people at the peak, apparently, of this meeting. So that set a record too. So people obviously
975.
975. Wow. Wow. I threw out, I think 600 or 700 early and was declared an early winner. But anyway, you guys, it's been a pleasure. Have a safe weekend. We'll see you next Tuesday night. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.